Where are we? There we are.
Ooh, what happened there? Hello, everybody. I was just furiously typing behind the screens then. And calm. Welcome to the Business Brunch live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and Twitter, and goodness knows where else, all over the place, all over the world. I'd just like to introduce my two fabulous co-hosts for today, our very own consultant, mentor, and business strategist guru. How many more words can I get into that? Melinda Ward, and the queen of marketing, and the princess of the value proposition, Vanessa. Can I call you Lady Ashworth? Vanessa
Lady Ashworth. Many do. Yes.
Welcome, ladies. And for those of you who have not met me before, my name's Sarah Farmer, and I am an executive leadership coach, and I deal with mindset and leadership and business growth and anything along those lines. So between the three of us, we know a thing or two, don't we? We do have a guest coming. Fingers crossed, today, who I was just on the phone to just as we were about to go live, who is desperately trying to get in. So Vanessa, I don't know if you can send the link through to the lovely Louise again.
I'll look at that and
make sure she's got it. But anyway, the joy of a live show. So this show is all about helping anyone who's working from home. Maybe you're looking for a new role, maybe you're working in an office, but you're not getting the support and sort of the joy that you need from your team and manager. We can do all that for you. So our aim is to help you thrive, grow, develop in this, not crazy, we're getting used to it, this new world that we're living in and working in now. During every single show, our aim is to help you connect and network with others. So if you want to stay quiet and just watch, that's absolutely fine. If you want to say hi to people, let them know you're open to connecting, that's also brilliant. That's what this show is for, because we know the power of networking in this virtual world. You can share your good news with us. We'll give you a hurrah from the sides. We'll be your cheerleading team. Maybe there's something you want to tell us about. Maybe it's something you'd normally discuss around the water cooler that you need to have a chat about. Tell us. We will give you some thoughts, some opinions, some help to move you forward. But the biggest thing we've added for this year is helping you develop your skills and your knowledge. We're in a really competitive marketplace, whatever line of business you're in. So consistently growing and developing what you know, what you are able to do in the workplace is only going to be a good thing. It's really going to help you stand out in this crowded marketplace. Now, not every organisation offers regular development and support. Some people do, and some of it's not so good. But if you're working for yourself, the cost of developing yourself and your skills can also be quite high. So we just want to help get those neurons firing, developing you, helping you understand some new stuff, maybe just developing the knowledge you've already got in certain areas, but enabling you to do and be better at whatever it is you do. Now, I am absolutely delighted, fingers crossed, to be welcoming our guest for this week, which is the fabulous Louise Power. Vanessa, has she managed to join the link yet? Yes!
Cheers!
We were having a very frantic discussion just about 30 seconds ago, going, I can't get you on. It's so lovely to see you, and thank you for joining us. Louise, a diversity, equity and inclusion consultant. She's going to tell you more about herself and what she does, but she's going to be helping us understand the power of difference today. And thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. I know you're so busy. Welcome to the Business Brunch.
Thank you ever so much, Sarah, Melinda and Vanessa. It's fantastic to be here. Happy Monday. I hope you all had a lovely, lovely weekend, and welcome to our guests as well today. So
before you go into what you're going to be doing, we're just going to see who's out there, who else, what people have been up to this weekend. Give you a second to just calm down. And then you'll be able to tell us what you're going to do.
That's fine. Yes. I'm here for the conversation, ladies. And when you're ready to start, then you can just let me know.
Oh, well, we will do. But we wanted you here just to say hi to people as well. So let us know who's out there. Say hi. Where are you in the world? What's on your mind today? What's getting in your way? What's blocking you from having the most joyous week you want to be having? And if you've got any questions for Louise, if you can just hold fire on those for a minute, because they'll all get messed up in this other stuff. And when Louise starts her session, you can start putting your questions in the chat for her as well, and we'll come to those maybe during the middle of it if it's appropriate, but more towards the end when Louise has finished sharing her story with us. So over to you, Vanessa. Who's anybody in? Anybody talking to us?
People were being a bit shy at first, but people are starting to join us now. So Gary is here, and Gary says it's great to be here on the very first ever Business Brunch. It is our new name, isn't it? So thank you for joining us, Gary. And Gary is branching or brunching from home today. Also with us, we have Louise Brown. Hello, Louise, and good afternoon to you.
Hello, Louise.
Hello.
And we have Pauline here. Good afternoon, all. And Danny says, hola.
Hola, amigo.
And, I don't know where Danny is in the world. He's probably not in Spain, but hola, we like it.
Yeah.
And Jo is here as well. And she is very glad that January is almost over. I don't know, have you been doing dry January, Jo? Are you looking forward to a glass of wine? How are the resolutions going?
It's quite funny because there was a bit of a group chat going on with part of the networking group that we're all part of, the Girls Club. And I don't know if Jo was on that, but it was there was a lot of, January's going on way too long. And I was like, I'm sorry, ladies, you're all having such a bad January. What's going on? They were like, no, it's just because we can't have a drink. I was like, sorry. I thought I was going to have to help in some way, but no, I think that's been causing problems. So nice to see some people, not see, but hear some people are out there. What's going on for you at the moment, ladies and gentlemen? Anything in your way, anything you're proud of, anything you want to say, well done, you've achieved something awesome, or anything you just want to share with us about what you've done this weekend? What about you, Louise? What have you been up to this weekend other than working really hard?
I know the working did come into it, but it was actually quite nice and relaxing. I had a pajama day actually on Saturday.
Nice.
which is very infrequent, where I just sort of relaxed, washed my hair, got some of the things done I need to do around the house. Sometimes we all need to take that time out, don't we, where we sort of like just have those lazy days to recuperate, because everything's go, go, go. And even on the weekends, if you're like me, we're dipping into our emails, doing a little bit of work here and there, a little bit of admin. And then, I've also got my other role, which is mum, which never stops, no breaks there. So it was quite nice to relax as well, and just have a bit of pajama day.
Sounds lovely. Oh, we've got Pauline from Dubai.
Yes.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum, she says, and she's glad it's almost over too. And Jo had her first G&T on Saturday, so she's looking forward to it. And then let's welcome Waggy. I don't know how you pronounce that, Waggy. I hope that's right. Who says it's his first time attending, so welcome and wishing you all the best too.
Thank you. That's really nice. What about you, Melinda? What were you up to at the weekend?
I was doing a bit of domestic stuff, but I was actually a bit of a rebel this weekend because I got the lawnmower out. My grass had gotten so tall because it never stopped growing through the winter and it's not drying out. So despite conventional wisdom that says you should never cut the grass in January, I cut the grass in January. I left it pretty long, obviously, but I felt so naughty.
It's good to think outside the box, isn't it, Melinda?
Well, I did check the Royal Horticultural Society website, and they said as long as it's still growing, it's fine to cut it as long as you leave it at least, a couple inches long and stuff. So.
You are wild, Melinda.
Wild.
What about you, Vanessa? What happened? You must have been outdoors doing something.
There's a few dog walks in there, but not a lot. Not a lot outdoors. I did quite a lot of decluttering as well. I didn't catch Kim's show on Friday, but apparently that was all about decluttering and lots of advice. I need to go back and catch it, but I've been doing that over the past week. My bedroom is gorgeous now. It's kind of, there's space and room, and it feels very lovely. But then after clearing that out, I then unpacked the camper van so I can sell it. So I brought all that stuff in, and that's kind of all over the kitchen and the hall and everywhere. So that's the next bit.
Vanessa, I saw that. Roxy.
Yeah, Roxy's going. Bye, Roxy. Bye-bye, so, is anyone else sharing us what they've been doing at the weekend?
Gary is saying he's so excited about his latest project. He's finally got the planning through after months of conversations.
It's good news, Gary. Well done. Very good. Anyone else?
And yeah, Waggy says, "Is my question?" Oh, this is for you later, Louise. You can think about this. He asks, "Is social vulnerability and economic vitality affected by diversity?" And he'd be
Oh,
happy to hear your feedback and your experience.
interesting. Thank you for
Absolutely,
that.
the answer is absolutely yes, and I'll touch on that later.
Marvelous. While we're just seeing if anyone else is coming in, I'll just share what I did. I did at the weekend. Oh, hold on, we won't. Danny's come in.
Yeah, Danny's
Hey, Danny's got distinction.
on his latest MBA module. Thank you for sharing that with us, Danny.
Very
Well
clever,
done.
Danny. Well done, you. Very, very clever. God, it's hard work doing the MBA as well. Not that I've done one. I just know that it's hard work. What did I do? I did what you did, Louise. I didn't wear pajamas because I had to go out. But I did on Sunday. I was so, do you know when you just reach a point where you're just so exhausted? And I booked myself in to the local spa down the road. I said, "What have you got?" They said, "I've got 25 minutes." I said, "What can you do in 25 minutes?" They went, "This is this and this." I went, "I'll have a head massage." So I basically paid for someone for 25 minutes to rub my head, which was lovely. And then I didn't go home. I went to my friend's house for a cup of tea. Then I came back and put my feet in a hot water, bubbly, bathy thing and did a pedicure. Oh, do you know what?
Self-care
Had to be done. Had to be done. So I had my head rubbed and my feet rubbed. Feel great. Anyway, if there are no one else that is out there telling us what wonderful things they've been up to and no major problems for us to try and solve this week, then I think we will head straight over to the wonderful Louise. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions coming in, and I know that all three of us will have questions for you as well. So oh no, not me. I don't want to be on the main screen. There we go. Let's get Louise on the main screen, who's going to talk to us about the power of difference. And you're going to share your story with us first, aren't you, lovely?
I am. I'm going to share my story with you, and then I'll be touching on some subjects around diversity of thought. I'll be speaking about allyship, and I'll be asking the panel some questions as well.
Ooh. Okay, we'll be listening. We'll be ready.
It's only one question, so I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. So thank you again to everybody. I'll just reiterate, my name is Louise Power, and I'm the founder of two organisations, iOrbit and the Power Hour. So I'm really glad to be here and sharing my story with you on the Business Brunch, and to give you some takeaways for diversity, equity, and inclusion. If I go on too long, please do not hesitate to stop me, ladies.
I think we were saying
it's a big topic.
If some questions come in, we might jump in.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to give some backstory, give some context on the allyship and diversity, and diversity of thought, and then we'll take some questions. So I'll go through as easily as possible here. So
cool. Sounds
so my backstory. So growing up, it was very colourful. I say this because there were lots of different dynamics, and that will take longer to explain than we have today. But growing up in an area where there were lots of socio-economical disparity with issues around education, crime, and lack of knowledge, I was literally fighting the odds against me to succeed, as opposed to an ecosystem of things that were there to support me where I wanted to be. Despite many reasons to fall short, I was always intrinsically ambitious. I never let any of my circumstances hold me back. Innately, I always wanted to create something special, work hard, have a good career, and leave a mark on the world. My early career was in the public sector, where I had a middle management role. And there I was lucky enough to encounter a fantastic manager called Colin that realized my potential and invested lots of time in supporting me into my next steps. He helped me to take courses that would further my knowledge and help elevate my career progression. I stayed in local authority for quite some time, and then moved on to work for the London Olympic Authority during the Olympic period. Soon after, so a little bit on the personal side now, soon after I met my partner, planned a life together that unfortunately didn't work out, and consequently I became a single parent. But this, of course, was difficult for me, because it was the last thing I had hoped for myself, considering everything I had overcome during my formative years. One day I sat in this apartment where I'd gone back to with, unpacking my boxes with my baby, small baby, and I realized the time is now. I really wanted to give my little baby a start in life. And this was when I decided to bring my entrepreneurial journey and abilities to life. And I decided to make my dream for business a reality. I rolled myself first into international business degree and started my first business supporting startup and growth companies. Soon after, I had the news that there was a tech city in the Olympic Park, not far from where I lived, and I decided to connect with them and discuss the plans I had going forward to support women and people from underrepresented groups into employment. Plexel, where I've been based and I was based for since 2017. They shout out to Plexel, and I'd like to say thank you to them. They loved my idea of my business with a social arm and asked me to join professional services in an ecosystem of support with Barclays PLC, Hiscox Insurance, Kent Little Law Firm, and Alexandra Ross. So a big shout out to Plexel for believing in me. We all formed an ecosystem to support the startup and tech companies within the Olympic Park. I then realised disparity for women in tech, and even further away, women that looked like me. So I began supporting women into the tech industry and giving them access and opportunities. There were a few things. One of them was that many women did not think there were spaces or places for them in the world of tech because it's a male-dominated industry and because they did not have access and opportunity about what qualifications they need, how to upskill or who to speak to. I then began employing women with qualifications and capability that needed part-time roles with startup and tech companies that had never either had the time or money to employ someone full-time and merge the two intermediaries. It was there I began advocating in those spaces, being a voice of people from underrepresented groups and creating access and opportunities and being in a perfect position really to understand the barriers and bottlenecks on both sides, grassroots and the corporate world. I then started the Power Hour, which is a social enterprise and media platform for diversity, equity, inclusion, and includes diversity, equity, and inclusion consultancy to bridge those gaps for people from underrepresented groups and form relationships with leaders and change makers to increase knowledge, understanding, inclusion, belonging, education opportunities, and business growth. And now I'd like to speak to you about allyship and what that means, because a lot of my career and the things that I have achieved has been the support of some fantastic allies on the way. And speaking about allyship and what that means is that it's somebody that's passionate and invested in change. They promote a common interest and they're there to help you, but also could make a connection, both parties benefiting from the relationship and learning from one another. There are so many ways in which that we can be an ally to people from underrepresented groups. These groups are from different intersections with protected characteristics because of prejudice, discrimination, and unfortunately bias. This includes race, gender, people from LGBTQI communities, those who are neurodiverse with what I call superpowers, such as autism and ADHD, and those and more form part of intersectionality. So by being an ally, you can start off simply by just being interested in difference and forming conversations, speaking to people, different cultures, speaking to people outside of your regular comfort zone. It's good to admit, actually, that we all have bias and we really need to challenge this. Starting off by inviting someone for a coffee, not just at work, but in our own personal lives. We all sign up in our roles at work and ingrained in our businesses, promoting equity and inclusion opportunities. And we promote this in our moral standing, but how many of us ingrain this into our normal daily lives? Not just because somebody is racist or anything to that overt extreme, but sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's being scared of saying the wrong thing, of the unknown. Sometimes it's just being comfortable where we are. These are opportunities where, for example, you could become a sponsor by talking about somebody's expertise, something you see in somebody else, recommending them for learning opportunities and sharing goals. You can also advocate for women or people of colour, for example, to do keynote speaking or join panels. You can join co-mentoring relationships, so it doesn't become highly taxing on the person from an underrepresented group, but instead learning from each other. To advocate, you can also advocate on their behalf for people in your network. So, for example, another big thank you to my friend Karen Anderson, whom I met at Cambridge University doing a course in social entrepreneurship. She introduced me to Changing the Chemistry, where I'm now a board of trustee. Our objective there is to increase diversity in the boardroom. Changing the Chemistry is a peer-to-peer membership group. We have about 750 members, and we do a number of things to support people into board roles, including information, mentoring, and technology. And workshops. So the importance of diversity of thought, and I'm going to come to a question in a moment for the panel. I would first like to say and speak about diversity of thought very quickly. Diversity of thought is about bringing varied viewpoints together. There is more than one way to think, and if we all think similar to the people we spend the most time with, who are mostly like us, that come from similar places like us and went to the same universities, for example, it's possible we gather this similar results time and time again. And you know, this sums up the recruitment process and other aspects. So I would actually like at this point to ask the panel a question.
Oh, and can you ask the audience as well? Because they might have answers if we don't.
Absolutely.
Pressure off.
What's
Bring
the
it
question?
This is a mobile phone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Say it.
It's for conversation and interaction, back and forth, translation of conversation. I'd like to ask the panel and other people, just in one sentence, what does this mean to you?
Ooh.
Say connectivity.
Connection above everything else. Yeah.
I've written safety because I don't feel safe when I go without it.
Right, fantastic. Safety, connection, anything else?
And what do the audience? What if anyone's out there listening? What are you thinking out there? What does a mobile phone mean to
I
you?
suppose in a way it's freedom in that, you know, you can be working now from anywhere. And so you're not necessarily tied to the geography where you physically are at the moment.
That's good.
Somebody said information, another person said addiction for me.
Yeah.
Always in my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Annoying. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is no right or wrong answer. I'm just.
Can I add death of interpersonal relationships?
Yeah. It can be a distraction for sure.
From my childhood perspective,
allowed to be. But.
Yeah, it's just it can really take over, and it's for kids. I've got 2 kids, and I watch them both age 16 and 14, just living their life through that and not speaking.
Absolutely, because Gary said that it's exclusion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yet for some it's inclusion, isn't it? You look at the kids who on it all the time.
Yeah.
To be there.
My son said
and for people who are physically isolated, it's more inclusion. But for those who are, you know, and especially for the disabled as well, it's a lifeline for people who may not be able to physically go places, or, you know, if they need translation, or if they need, you know, like speech to text capabilities, things like that. It's really, it can be a symbol of freedom, but it's a powerful tool, and all powerful tools have to be used with limits and caution, I think.
Very true.
Absolutely. And there is no right or wrong answer to everything that everybody has said. And yeah, so it's for two-way communication. And I'm just going to give you 2 hypothetical scenarios. So one of them is a real life scenario, a businesswoman, fast-moving entrepreneur. She uses her phone constantly, needs it for everything, has 3 children, and you know, she says, I use my phone for communication with everybody from schools to professionals. Unfortunately, she had an accident which left her with the inability to use her left hand, and said she wishes that the phone command buttons was on the other side, because she now finds it awkward and needs to change, and she needs to change her phone. Another example is someone that lives in a very small remote village. People are very happy there. They live a very simple and humble life, but just a few of them have phones. and they use it to communicate with neighbouring villages. When people want to use the phone, they come to one or two people frequently to use that. So they find this phone perfect. It gives up to 10 hours charging time. And the reason why I've used these examples and asked you all your views on what this mobile phone means to you is because when this mobile phone was being made, there is no doubt that Samsung would have had to do the same thing. They would have had to have diversity of thoughts. They would have had to have groupthink. They would have had to bring people together in order to get a very varied scenario of what this phone should look like, who the type of people it should serve, the different communities of people that need this mobile phone, how important or unimportant it's going to be, how inclusive or exclusive it's going to be. And this is exactly what we all need to be thinking about in our businesses, in our lives, when we're bringing up children and when we are going out there into the world. If we're intrinsically very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, is the importance of of how we go forward in ourselves being more inclusive, so that our outcomes come from a diverse perspective. And I'll just summarize that. One of my favorite quotes is by Shirley Chisholm, who says, "If there's not a seat at the table, bring a folding chair." And I absolutely love that quote because I've been dragging that folding chair in every space that I go into so that I can do exactly that. I can bring my diversity of thought, my story, your stories, different objectives, and from different people to advocate in those space so that I can connect that with the product or service that people are trying to bring to market or create. And that's me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really, really powerful, really interesting. So I'm sure we've all got questions, and Joe, yeah, I love that quote, Joe. Have we got any questions coming in, Vanessa, for Louise? I think we had one right at the beginning, didn't we? We can go back to that to start with.
We did. Well, not really. There is a question, but Gary says, in the diversity, equality and inclusion legislation and policy arena, there seems to be a move to include belonging. And he asks, how can we write a policy that includes belonging when it's a matter of the heart?
Oh,
that's a deep one. That's good.
Yeah, that's a really big one, Gary, and thank you. There is definitely a difference between inclusion and belonging, because you can include somebody into a discussion or a foreman or a round table, right? But if they don't feel as though they belong there and they haven't been ingrained and intrinsically included in the conversation, and there's been no kind of real space made for them, then actually, do I feel as though I belong here, or is it tokenism? Am I here because I'm the only woman? Am I here because I'm the only Black person? Am I here because I'm the only person from the LGBTQI community, or I have a disability? It's very different. It's very different to going somewhere and feeling like I belong here because I cannot be what I cannot see. But there's a community here from the LGBTQI community, BTQI community. There's a community here for people that look like me. There's a community here of women. So I'm not the first one. I'm not the first woman here. So I must belong here because the organization I've gone to work for already omits all of that energy that we are an equal opportunities employer, and we have X amount of women already on our board. We have X amount of women already working in our industry. So I think that it's more than the heart. I think it's more of a must. And it at some point needs to be written into policy in such a way that it extends that inclusion to, in a matter of evidence. We see what we're walking into, or we see what it is that we're trying to create in order to belong to, so that we know that we have a seat at the table. And he says the community of humans. Yes, and that depends also, Gary, on which community of humans.
Yeah. You know, it's tricky in a corporate environment. It's a bit tricky because you can't, it's difficult to sort of legislate inclusion, although you can set an environment that encourages it. So many years ago, when I think about it now, I worked at on a consultant project at McDonald's corporate headquarters in Chicago. And I thought it was a bit strange at the time, just because I'd never seen it before. But in every meeting room, they had huge signs up. Now, this was in the early 90s, and they were listing the code of conduct for meetings. And one of the things on the code of conduct is that everybody in the room should have an opportunity to speak at least once during the course of the meeting. And you were supposed to, at the close of the meeting, if someone hadn't spoken, the host of the meeting had the responsibility to say, "Oh, Louise, I haven't heard from you today. What would you like to add to the conversation?" And go around the room and make sure everybody had space and space to be heard. And you had to plan that time into your meetings. And I thought that was actually a bit maybe ahead of their time, and people might slate the food, but as a corporate policy, that was actually really good and made for a very inclusive atmosphere in meetings.
I think that sounds genius. And actually, any great leader should be making sure that everybody, irrespective of who you are, what you are, where you come from, is able to have their say. And also managing the ones that speak too much.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I've definitely carried that with me since like the early 90s into all the meetings that I run and all the workshops I run, because often the quiet people have some really important stuff to say. They're just not feeling supported or comfortable to override the noisy ones.
100%, Melinda. And as part of the consultancy that I do, I incorporate a piece of technology for exactly that, where people can speak anonymously, they can have a reflection, they can have a question, and
cool.
and you know, and there are some people with different types of neurodiversity and may not be feel confident to speak. So the technology that I use really interrupts that, called ASICs. It really interrupts that so that those conversations are a lot more inclusive and people are able to have a voice. Because even sometimes when, you know, I mean, I think it's fantastic, that example you gave, but even sometimes, even with that opportunity,
yeah, absolutely,
people may say something but not say exactly what they wanted to say.
Yeah, or feel a bit shy. Yeah.
Or feel a bit shy, and they've got great points to make in terms of developing products and service, business growth. Hey guys, this is a business brunch. This is about business growth. We're all in the same pot together. We want to see that business grow. We want to drive change. We want to increase our margins and our profitability. And some people have great things that they can include and experiences, and sometimes technology helps interrupt that.
One of the things that really struck me as you were talking, and we talked about this last week as well, is this challenging our own bias, but also what you said today about the fear of approaching people. Am I going to say the wrong thing? Now, as a 50-year-old female, white female, with two kids who are now all over this, and I never was, because I never knew anything about it at school. It wasn't a thing. They're constantly telling me off for getting the wrong word, for saying something I shouldn't have said. So I'm starting to go quiet, thinking, well, I better not say anything, which drives us into a little bit of a hole. So how would you suggest, we're talking about becoming an ally with people we are maybe unused to being allies with? How do you approach it?
I think very, very, very naturally, coming out of your comfort zone and thinking about the circumference of your immediate community and the things that you can do. And I mean, hey, you know, anybody's ready they're welcome to reach out to me, because I think that there's always an opportunity to have a coffee with, you know, if you live in an area where there's not really much of a diversity in terms of the parents that take their children to school, that might be quite difficult. But I would say that if you do have the opportunity to speak to people at school, that's a great place to do that. Some people have places where they go for religious purposes, where they get to speak to different from diverse backgrounds. Other people go to the gym, right? And it's about stepping out of your comfort zone and having those conversations and inviting people for coffee. And actually sometimes just saying on LinkedIn, somebody that has, shares a common interest with you and saying, hey, can we have a coffee? Can we pick up a conversation? And being transparent and being vulnerable and saying, I need to unlearn some of the things that I knew very naturally, but I would like to learn more about how I can embed myself in more of a diverse group personally and in business. And I think that anybody from any of the intersections, it's the same thing if you're looking at race, LGBTQI. I was, pretty confident in the fact that knowing I was Black, right? You can look at me and see that. I'm a woman, right? But in terms of the LGBTQI community, I had to stretch myself to make sure I embedded myself in that community. I had to have coffees, build relationships, have conversations, understand the barriers that people in that community are facing, and to really get to grips with what they identified with, which was a very different journey to mine. So I would say that to start from where you are, it's really important, because if we're saying that we believe in diversity, equity, inclusion, and we're doing all this stuff in our businesses, for example, it does our personal lives even match up to that, even by a quarter, for example?
No. Well, no, it doesn't. Absolutely doesn't. And that's the conversation we had last week, which really hit home to me. And it's not through actively not doing it. It's just through actively not doing it. So hold on.
Not doing it.
Not doing it. But, it didn't even cross my mind. And I think that's why these conversations are so powerful. It's not that we didn't think of doing it. It's just no one ever challenged our thoughts. And I didn't challenge it myself. And I live in leafy green Surrey, where it's not diverse in the slightest. Even going to the gym isn't diverse. They're all the same in there as well. So
yeah,
thank God for LinkedIn and the
thank God for LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the reasons why some of those communities are not diverse is because of socio-economical disparity.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's because of opportunity and access. It's because of the things where people are living in inner cities and suburban areas where they perhaps haven't had the access or opportunity to move out to some of those places in Surrey, or maybe they've got the financial capability, but they don't think there's a door there because everybody in Surrey looks a certain way.
Yeah.
So should I move to that street even though I have the money? Because what
Daunting, potentially daunting.
right? Or should I move to a street where I more than have the financial capabilities? Or should I move to a state in America where I know more people are going to be like me? Or should I move to another road? So sometimes it isn't about the economical side. It's about where we position ourselves socially.
Where we feel accepted. Yeah. And I can't wait for the day when that thought isn't even a thought. I don't look at people. I don't actively look at people and think, oh, you're a colour, you're a man. Obviously it's in there. It's happening unconsciously. But when we get to a point where we don't have to think about this at all, and everybody is welcome everywhere, that's the day that is going to be one hell of a great day, isn't it? Danny's got a great question.
Danny does. So Danny asks, what are your thoughts on today's organisations focusing too much on diversity in terms of protected characteristics, quotas, etc., instead of focusing on removing structures, processes and bias to improve workplace inclusivity, with diversity being the output of that?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Danny,
that's an MBA, I can tell. Danny, using a lot of words. Good on you, Danny.
Danny, that's a massive question, and I'd love us to have a coffee afterwards because I'd have to answer that question in sections, right? So too much diversity. I'll start with that part. I don't know if an organisation can focus too much on diversity, and because. So you was asking about protected capacity instead of focusing on removing structures, processing. Okay, now the reason why it's a big question is because the structures have been there for as long as I can remember, or as long as my lifespan has been there. And those in those structures are the biases, is the discrimination, is the otherness. So it's very difficult not to remove those structures by, for example, it's not as if they can say, right, we'll just go through everybody and sack everybody that we think is part of this structural racial tension, or structural not retaining staff from different backgrounds. All of that's going to take time, because everybody has biases they have to put their hand up to, and we need to ingrain ourselves in changing mindsets and going into the organizations and creating cultures, different cultures again. So I understand what you're saying, because I think that for some people, they feel as though, maybe, when we start talking about all of this, I get pinpointed as having white privilege. Sarah and I spoke about that. And I think it's important to have conversations, to have peer-to-peer, to have a space where people are giving and taking, so that as much as people are speaking at Sarah, for example, when Sarah and I had that conversation, but also Sarah's then able to describe scenarios back, so people can learn from each other in order to go forward. I gave Sarah a fantastic example about being worried about applying for a job for a C-suite level role that a Black woman had already been in, and the kind of things that was going around in my mind. And she shared with me that although she wasn't a Black woman, she experienced the same kind of feelings and thinking, oh, okay, as a woman, there's a man in that seat. Will I get a seat at that table? So to answer your question, Danny, we will speak further on it, but I think that it's not just easy to remove those structures, those processes and biases that have been created over hundreds of years. It's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to take lots of people working together really, really, really hard. And imagine if we just remove somebody from a role, I'll tell Danny, without educating them.
And then awareness is the big thing.
Awareness, and then they moved into another role and the same thing happened.
Yeah.
Or they moved onto a street and the same thing happened.
It's not solving the problem, is it? It's just moving the problem
around. Yeah.
There's a timeline, isn't there? I think, oh God, I speak and the dog starts. Typical.
The dog's got something to say, he wants to be included.
Yeah. I don't know. So, I mean, we can, I suppose, positive, is it positive discrimination?
Yes.
There's that you don't want to employ someone and oh God, I've got so many questions.
One at a time, Vanessa, one at a time.
Yeah. But by putting people into positions so that people can see diversity around the boardroom and see diversity, that helps to, in time, break down those structures. So it's recruiting for the right reasons, but also there is that education point as well, isn't there? So you kind of got to do both at the same time. And I think what you hinted at before is there is this gap now, and it's not going to get fixed overnight. So it's making the right steps and making the right choices now. I mean, on that whole, the sourcing candidates from unrepresented communities and the fear of somebody feeling like a token, and how, God, I imagine it's difficult for companies, isn't it? So what can you tell us?
Can I just say we are at time, but I
think we might need to do a follow-up session.
I think we're going to need to do a follow-up, but it's a great question, and maybe we can come back to it, because I think a lot of people will be asking that question as well, is how do I do it without looking like it's a token? And Maria,
being transparent in what it is that you're trying to do, I think is really important. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Speak to people in a safe space and say, can I say this? Would this be okay to say? Would this be okay to do? And do that with your tribe. When I say your tribe, what I mean by that is people from different backgrounds, people from different experiences form an allyship with people that will give you their honest opinion, that will help you to form part of these decisions, so that when that time comes, there's a comfortability there, because what you've done, you've done exactly what the intention was, to create diversity of thought. And actually, and you can say that in doing this, before I done this, I put this together with a group of people, and I spoke it over in order to create this outcome. So I think it's, we could go on all day, ladies.
What I'd like to do is just ask anyone that is still out there listening, just what have you got from this? One thing you've got from this. What did you find useful? What's triggered something in your head? I mean, for me, it's really becoming clear this isn't something to shy. It's never something to shy away from, but this is about educating, communicating, but communicating with a positive intent, which is I want to learn and I want to help. And when you've got that, anything you say and do will come across right. But I wonder I don't know, Melinda, Vanessa, final thoughts from you and from anybody out there. What are your learnings from this? Just one thing.
Well, I would say, the perspective on, just, as you say, feel the fear, do it anyway. As long as it's with the right intent and communication, you can start to make a difference collaboratively. And I think, that's where, being an ally really comes in. It's all about communication. But for those of you who have been really impressed with Louise, feel free to follow her on all the social media channels if you haven't already. If you're not following the rest of us individually, please do so. We've got a lot to share, and a lot of new program guests, and our weekly show will have different themes each week. So if you're following us, you'll be the first to know.
Can I just say, next week I'm going to be doing, there's been a lot of talk over the last week or so about imposter syndrome, and there's a lot of bullshit out there, people giving advice that they shouldn't be giving advice on, things that they shouldn't be giving advice on. So I'm going to blow that open next week and talk about that if I can, ladies, because there's some facts that we need to get out there, and there's some misinformation going on, and it's really annoyed me. So I'm going to sort that out next week.
I want to talk about it now. I can't wait till
But Louise, can I just say
something?
I was saying my email address. I'm happy to share my email address.
Oh, brilliant! Maybe you can go into the post afterwards and just pop your email address in there if people want to get hold of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Louise. It's been great.
Anna Marie said, I literally wrote chapters in the book called "Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway." Cool. Have a look at Anna Maria's book. See what's out there. Yeah, brilliant, Louise. Really good to have you on. I know you're.
I've read the book. I've read the book.
You've read the book.
Yay!
So it's been lovely having you on. Thank you. I'm sure we'll have you back. Any questions you've got that you didn't get answers, pop them in the chat on replay, and we'll get them to Louise, and maybe we'll get it back on again if she'll come to us. But have a great rest of the week, everybody, and thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
Vanessa, thank you ever so much.
And thank you, Louise.
You're more than welcome.
Bye.